Thank you again for joining in, sir. My first question to you is, from your point, as someone who has closely followed the region, how do you assess the significance of these elections for Bangladesh at this juncture?
Well, it's extremely important that we have elections in Bangladesh because since the last election, which was won by the Awami League, and after which there was a mob movement of protests which led to the prime minister leaving, we haven't had a democratic process in our neighbor. And as a country that has benefited from democracy, we hope that our neighborhood would also seek to benefit from it. So elections are always the best way to go ahead. More so because I believe that the regime that we have in Dhaka today is not exactly a constitutional regime, but was kind of enforced because of the very strange circumstances.
Absolutely, sir. And what do you see as the key factors contributing to this election? Are there economic conditions that are going to be a major issue, governance questions, or the India issue? What are going to be the key factors?
So I think all these are very important factors for any country going into an election. But I would say that in this particular election, because the process for the last a little under 2 years has been hijacked by a somewhat radical movement, partly religious, partly anti-India, that has become the major discourse. So while at one level there is a question of governance of what the Sheikh Hasina government and the Awami League have done for the people, there is also what is the anticipation of what the other political forces can do in the future. The main question in some ways has become the issue of Bangladesh itself and its identity. And in this, I find there are two contrasting stories that come about. One is the Islamic identity of Bangladesh, which in some ways led to the creation of East Pakistan in 1947, and in some ways a denial of the movement towards Bangladesh, which was created in 1971. So there are these two contrasting stories. The second one, which is equally important, is that what we find in this particular instance is that although not at the grassroots level, the influence of external actors, particularly of countries like Pakistan and Turkey and China and the United States, has been very, very obvious.
So we had also seen the reports of crackdown on Awami League, which was Sheikh Hasina's party. How crucial is broad political participation to the credibility of long-term stability of Bangladesh democratic process? On the same side, we have seen that elections are also going to be happening in Nepal as well. There, we have not seen this kind of political exclusion, but in Bangladesh, the same situation is prevailing. How do you assess this, sir?
So it's actually rather strange because if you look at our neighborhood, democracy has not been a very strong factor. But apart from Pakistan, which has had a very strange practice of military behind the curtains dictating terms, the other countries actually have had elections and have had an electoral democracy process. And as you rightly mentioned, if you look at the instances of not just Nepal, but even Sri Lanka, which had a sort of a movement which upturned the popular governments of that time, we did find that the elections that followed did follow a democratic process. In other words, all the political forces were given the space to take part in the election so that the free will of the people could be expressed in the most widest form. But this is not the case in Bangladesh. And I think there is a certain, that's why I say this denial of 71 is one of the agenda that is driving this regime and its supporters. And therefore, this particular process will need close monitoring because the effectiveness and efficacy of any outcome will depend on has the will of the people actually been expressed.
So we have also seen manifestos of multiple political parties in Bangladesh. They have continuously mentioned about neighborhood and India. And except for that, there have been also in recent months, there have been rising anti-India incidents, as you also mentioned. So how should India interpret this election?
Well, we understand that in any political system, there will be different perceptions which look at the interests of that particular country and their community. And so we, as a sovereign nation as well, will deal with that sovereign nation in that understanding. So we will take whatever the government is, any legitimate government that comes about, we'll deal with them accordingly. And we'll, of course, wish to establish, relations which lead towards mutual good. But in this particular instance, I think there are a few things that are noteworthy. Normally, one would say that there are three political strands within Bangladesh. One, which is the 71 strand, which is led by the Awami. And of course, often you would have similar voices from other parties, including Jatiyo Party and so on. The second was the BNP, which was also part of the movement, but is very closely aligned with Pakistan and has also got very close ties with China. And the third was the Islamist force, which was the Jamaat and others. Now, the Jamaat in particular had never had very large support base politically. But what we do find is that they have infiltrated institutions in Bangladesh at this particular point during the last 2 years or so after the protest took place, and in which they have taken over various institutions of democratic institutions and subverted them towards their objectives. And therefore, their intent towards India will have to be viewed very carefully. At the end of the day, I would say that we have two kinds of interests. We have core strategic interests with our neighbors. And if any of that is affected, there would be a price to pay. So if our security or other interests are affected, there would be a price to pay. There's another one, which is the cooperative agenda, which actually helps common good, economic relations, cultural relations. And we hope that will also be able to be developed, because today, in many ways, all these are at a standstill.
Absolutely, sir. Just one last question, which is a little uh, uh, above from politics, is that we have also seen the politics entering cricket. We have seen Bangladesh cricket board's chief meeting Pakistan cricket board's chief, and they are kind of uh, teaming up against the BCCI and India's stars. So, is it more about politics that is currently going on between BCB and PCB, or is it just cricket?
It's not cricket, unfortunately. And I think we shouldn't bring politics into sports. It has its own very special relationship. It has a certain bonding, particularly in our part of the world where cricket plays such an important role in bringing people together. And at such times, all differences disappear. But what we have seen, and this is what I was referring to, that over the last 2 years or less, we have seen the attachment of Bangladesh towards Pakistan. The attachment is not necessarily something that you should look down upon, but that attachment has had negative connotations. And in some fact, they're also misled by Pakistani propaganda. Now, Pakistan's relations with us, of course, are well known. And in this particular instance, I think what has happened is that the Bangladesh Cricket Board has really been led off to the wrong track by the Pakistan Cricket Board. And, Pakistan Cricket Board's agenda of enmity and animosity towards India has manifested in the Bangladesh representation in the World Cup. And this is most unfortunate. I think the only party that has gained in the process is Pakistan, because they will probably have one win less, because they would have lost to Bangladesh given their current form. So they will probably have avoided losing to what is their erstwhile East Pakistan. But this is most unfortunate. And I do hope that Bangladesh cricket will go back to its track and keep politics away from this. And I hope that they're not continuing to be misled by the Pakistanis.